Welcome to Power Lunch Live on LinkedIn. I'm Rhett Power, your host. We do this program every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and sometimes on Fridays when we have a special guest. And so the funding is that this is LinkedIn's new live platform. We also simulcast on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all with the help of Social Live. Now, a couple other fun parts about the show is that it is live and that you can ask questions. And so you can actually get to the answers to those questions right then and there. If you ask those questions, we monitor social media and we try to get to those questions when we have them. If you like the program, give it a like or share so that your network can benefit from these conversations and we can grow our audience, which is a bonus. So today I've got Tom Schwab. He is founder of the Interview Valet. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, and author. He's author of the podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business with Targeted Podcast Interviews. And basically, my understanding of what you do is you help people reach their ideal customer. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey, I am thrilled to be here on Power Lunch.
Well, thank you so much. We try to have some fun. It's kind of why we're here. And we, the point of the show is to learn from people like you, best practices, things that you do in your daily business that can help us get better at what we do. Now, you started Interview Valet after successfully starting several other businesses. What did you see in the market? What was the opportunity? Why did you start the company?
Yeah, and I think every business is an evolution, not a revolution. And you take what you've learned up to that point and you see how to apply it going forward. And one of the things that really struck me was everybody talking about breaking through the noise, right? And honestly, I think it was people just adding to the noise. It's like yelling at the Super Bowl. Nobody's hearing you. And I had to say, well, the idea that I'm going to break through the noise of these big consumer brands is probably not going to happen. And I looked at it and thought, how can we get in on the conversation that people are already listening to? And in a decade ago with blogging, instead of breaking through the noise, one of the hacks was to guest blog. Right? Get on an established platform, instead of writing a blog yourself, getting seen by 3 people, well, put it on Huffington Post, Wall Street Journal, get that know, like, and trust, and get the back links and authority from that. And so back in 2014, I hypothesized, I wonder if you could do that on podcast interviews. And so we started to test that. It worked out amazing. I mean, we were seeing conversion rates 25 times better than blogs. So at first I thought, it's just a niche. It's just a personality. We kept testing it. It kept working. And being an engineer myself, I'm like, we got to put a system together with this. Wrote a book, did an online course, and pulled the online course because people told me, you've given me the cookbook. You've given me the videos. I don't want to be the chef, right? You do it. Let me be the guest and you take care of the rest. So we really started to beta test that at the end of 2015 and took it out of beta in early 2016. And that became Interview Valet. We've got a team of 18 people, all geographically remote. Not everybody wants to live in Kalamazoo, Michigan with me. And we serve about 100 clients at any one time.
What is, when you say conversion rates, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, and that is, it's widely quoted, but quoted wrong, right? So conversion rates that I'm talking about is from visitor to your site to actually becoming a lead. So a good blog will convert at about 1% to 2%. So if 100 people come to your website, read the blog, 1% to 2% of them will actually fill something out. What we see off of podcast interviews is if they come to your site, you're looking at 25%, 50%, even up to 75% fill out a form, become a lead. And you would think, at first I thought, no, that can't be right. But after we tested it and then thought about it, it's like, well, of course, if somebody listens to you for 30 or 45 minutes, they've already self-selected, right? So if they come to your site, they're coming there as a hot lead.
That is that's phenomenal. The ROI, I mean, that's just phenomenal.
And to me, what I love about it too is that the leads that you get are people that really understand what you do and they want to work with you. Right. I was speaking at an event one time and somebody on the panel said, you need 75 new leads every day to your business. And I looked and I said, I couldn't handle 75 new customers.
No way.
And they said, no, just you, not customers, just leads. And I'm like, well, why would I want to lead? Why would I want to be emailing somebody if they couldn't be a great customer? This idea of bigger, 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 I think is again laughable. To me, it's better, better, better. I don't want 100 million leads. I want 100 new ideal customers.
That's what bugs me about all this lead generation stuff you get on LinkedIn and all these other things. It's just I don't need 500 leads for my coaching business every month, right? I just don't. It doesn't.
Well,
that makes sense to me.
And I think it's if you're going for a transaction or you're going for a relationship, right? So if it's just a transaction, yeah, put me in a funnel, let me buy it, but I'll probably never buy it again from you. Really, if it's based on a relationship, consultant, a brand, something like that, where they've got to know what your heart is, you've got to figure out how to build that relationship with them.
Yeah. So the key to me then, it seems like in this, with what you're doing, is really getting people in front of their ideal customer. And so how do you do that? What's the magic there? How does that happen?
Yeah. And I always say there's no magic and there's no trick. It's all a system, right? My first job out of college was running nuclear power plants. And that taught me that anything can be systematized, learned, really made to work. So our algorithm now, which is based on hundreds of clients and tens of thousands of interviews, really looks at four things. The first one is what everybody looks at, right? The podcast itself. And, does it have the right audience? Has it been around long enough that people are actually listening to it and engaging with it? And, there's a lot of numbers that are mysterious, like number of downloads or listeners. Those aren't publicly available. But you can look at, how they rank, how many ratings and reviews, things like that.
Right.
So that's just one of the signals we look at. The other one is the website, right? Are they putting show notes? Are they putting backlinks to you? We've got some clients that do it just for the backlinks and the search engine optimization value of it.
Right.
Then the third thing we look at is the reach. So how much are they promoting this? Are they promoting it on social media? Are they promoting it to their email list? You do a great job at getting the word out there about your show. If a podcast isn't doing that, you wonder how many people are actually going to find out about it. And then finally, the last thing we look at is experience with previous clients. And, some podcasts, some shows have always converted well and other ones don't. And I think a big part of that is it a good conversation or is it the same, 5 questions to every person? Because those get old and you really can't tell your story on that. So those are the things we look at in our algorithm when we go from, 800,000 podcasts down to, the 2 or 3 dozen that are really going to make a difference to somebody.
800,000 podcasts.
Well, there's a little asterisk on that. You'll see the number thrown out there, 800,000 podcasts, which is true. But there's also, I believe it was Libsyn reported that of those, 250,000 have actually posted in the last 30 days. So it's like anything else, easy to start, hard to keep going.
Tell me about it. So I want to ask you, I want to take 2 tracks today. Mm-hmm. I want to come from the podcaster perspective because I want to pick your brain a little bit on that, and then come from the client or the person who wants to be interviewed that's got a story to tell. So from a podcaster standpoint, you talk about podcast marketing a little bit. What interview marketing? What is that? What is that? What does that mean?
To me, it's the idea, some people will call influencer marketing. I
Okay.
call this using other people's platform, right? In finance, a lot of times they'll talk about leveraging other people's money. To me, it's leveraging other people's platform, right?
Okay.
So if you want to be on a show as big as, the Oprah show when she was on television, you've got two options, two tracks. You can either make your own show that's just as big, or you can get on hers. And
Right.
I would argue one is easier. Still tough, but it's easier. The other thing too is that by going to other people's stages, if you will, you're always exposed to different audiences. If all you ever do is preach in your own church, all that's going to hear you is the people in those own pews. So I think this idea of interview marketing, going around to different places, really gets you out in front of your ideal audience. And also, to me, it's easier. The return on investment, anybody that says doing a show is easy has either never done it or never done it well. The great ones just make it look easy. It's like playing football on a Sunday afternoon. Yeah, I want to play for 2 hours and make millions of dollars. It's all the work that goes behind it. So I think with the interview marketing, you get more return on investment because all you have to do is, show up, perform, give a great interview, and then you move on. Whereas the host is the one that's going to be doing the promotion, the editing, the show notes, all the rest of that.
What is how do you get, I know the answer is probably practice, but how do you get to do you help people get their message refined and get really good at giving a good interview? Because there's an art to that.
There is, and it's different for podcasting, right? So
Okay.
if someone is used to radio or TV, let me go with radio first. Often they're used to the clock, right? We've got to go to a news and the weather, so wrap it up, or we've got to go to commercials. And the same thing, we worked with a gentleman that was a Fox News contributor, and we had to work with them. He had great stories, but none of his answers were more than 30 seconds. He was used to talking in very short sound bites because that's what television is. And he loved podcasts because he could tell more stories and give longer answers. The other thing that we work with our clients with is telling stories, avoiding doing a lot of facts and figures. If nobody can see you, you're going to have a much harder time explaining a graph. The other thing is that most people listen to podcasts sped up. About 70% of podcast listeners listen to them sped up. So you need to be very conscious of that too, in what you're sharing, the speed you're going, those sort of things. And then ultimately of what you're trying to accomplish. How are you going to move people from being just a passive listener to an active visitor to your site and ultimately an engaged lead? And sometimes you can't do that on television or radio, but podcasts are much more open to that.
How do you think live video is changing that?
I think it is more stressful for both parties, but it's also more engaging.
Okay.
Just from the idea of that you can get real questions back from people. It makes it more of a conversation. And I think that's one of the powerful things about podcasting is that you're almost listening into a conversation, right? So I would say the best podcast is like going to Denny's and there's two interesting people in the booth next to you. Sometimes it's 8 a.m. Sometimes it's at 3 a.m. Yeah, when the bars come out, it'd be rude for you to turn around and watch them. It'd be rude for you to get in on the conversation. But man, you just want to listen in. And I think the video adds more to that. And people learn in different ways, right? So some people love to watch the video. Other people just want to listen to it. Somebody asked me, when do you think podcasting will hit 100%? And I had to think, it's like, I don't think radio, television, or newspaper ever hit 100%, right? 10% of the US population is hearing impaired. They're not going to listen to my podcast interview. But you can take this and repurpose it. So, we talk, you can transcribe it, make it into blogs. You can find 140 characters of genius in 40 minutes of me talking and make a tweet out of it or a meme out of it. So I think it's amazing how you can produce in the way that's easiest for you. And that could be, live video, recorded, whatever it is. And then you can repurpose that for how it's easiest for other people.
No, I do. I mean, right now this will be turned into a podcast, and it'll be turned in, I'll have it transcribed, and who knows, it might turn into a Forbes article or an Inc. article or something like that, because I think this is a fascinating topic. And so absolutely right. I mean, it gives you the ability to do all kinds of other content with it. No doubt. What is the so getting better at learning the different styles of interviews and learning how to do a podcast interview is important. Why, as a CEO, how do I find the right show to be on and the one that's going to give me the ROI? I mean, I want to get into that process a little bit more.
Yeah, and I would back up into that and say, will you get the ROI first, regardless of the show? And that's something that we've looked at also. I mean, how do you predict success with podcast interview marketing? Because,
and I'll find another, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
sure.
Do I have to give something in that interview to get that lead back or to get that engagement back? So
you definitely have to give them a reason to go to your website, right? Just by talking, they may not just go there. So like, for an example, our testing has always shown that giving people three ways to say yes always works out best. So a lot of times in my interviews, I'll talk about a checklist that we use. And I'll say, if you want the free checklist, it's there. You mentioned the book that I wrote. I sell a lot of those, but I give more away. So, if you want a free download, just go there and you can get that. Or even what always amazes me at the end when people say, well, how can people get in touch with you? And they start listing off their Instagram, their email, their Twitter, all the rest of that. People are listening. They're multitasking them. Give them one easy place to go to and put all of those things on it. The small yes, the checklist, the medium yes, the book, and that heck yes, where if they want to talk with you, let them talk to you.
So do what, like a landing page or something?
Yeah, and our testing has shown that you send them to a dedicated, we call it a welcome page. Okay. So here's an example. I think it's already built up here. Go to interviewvalet.com/power lunch. And the way a welcome page should be set up, the best practices is the first thing that loads is the picture of the host and the artwork, right? Because if somebody has just heard me, they've never seen me. So put a picture up there of somebody that they know, like, and trust. In e-commerce, it's referred to as a trust seal. Then put some boilerplate text in there. If you're here, it's because of this. And then put the three offers down there: the small yes, the medium yes, and the heck yes. And the reason for that is this is evergreen content. Yes, it's live in 2020, but there's probably somebody listening to the recording in 2025. And if I say, just go to my homepage, I guarantee you my homepage is going to change in 5 years and it'll just disappoint them. The other thing, this is a little bit on the geeky side from marketing. Now that you know that all the traffic, where it came from, you can attribute that traffic, know where it came from. You can nurture it differently, and you can really make decisions on what shows were home runs and which ones were base hits.
Right. That makes a lot of sense to me. How do you, let's say you're not at the stage where you want to hire interview valet at this point, but you want to sort of get used to the concept, used to the idea of being interviewed, because that's new for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. That's really new. How do you pitch a podcast?
Well, I would say put yourself in the shoes of a podcaster. What are the 3 types of people that a podcaster wants to have on their show? First one is their friends. So if you have friends, that's the easiest one to get on. The
Right.
second one is friends of friends, right? And that's where we come in. If we've got a relationship with them, we can introduce, we can vouch for them. The third one is people that you want to be your friends. So if you're pitching, make sure that you pitch in such a way that the host looks and says, wow, I'd like to learn more about this person. I'd like to get to know them. I'd like to introduce them to my audience. The other thing too is no one likes cold pitches, right? And I get pitched probably once or twice a day to be on my podcast. And each pitch comes about the same. Dear Tom, we love your podcast and want to be a guest. Well, there's only one problem with that. I don't have a podcast. I'm on somebody's list, if you're going to lie to me, tell me I'm pretty. Don't tell me you love my podcast. So think about that. I mean, if you wanted to get on somebody's podcast, listen to the show, right? Leave a rating and review. We're all vain. We all look at those things. If you leave a rating and review for a podcaster, they will see it. Share it on social media. Make a comment. Engage with them. So sort of make that warm introduction where it's somebody like, yeah, I'd like to get to know them more. Then when you actually reach out to them, your number one goal for being on a podcast is to make the host look like a genius for having you on the show, right? Because that's why do we introduce people? It's right. so that we look good too. So Absolutely. From that standpoint, always focus on that, and say, hey, I listen to the podcast. I really liked this episode. Hey, here's something that I think I could add to you and to the audience, right? Here's something. It's not, I'm trying to sell my new book, but no, I've got a different view on things, something that I could help, something that I could teach, something that I think would be interesting, and then just make it easy for them, right? Don't make them hunt down your social media. Don't make it hunt down your picture. Don't make them hunt down your bio on how you want to be introduced. Just make it easy for them to say yes.
Are the from the business perspective, a couple of questions. Are the most successful podcasts that you've seen out there, are they focused on a narrow topic? What's the sort of recipe for success if you're starting a podcast?
Yeah. And I think the richest are in the niches. You hear that a lot of time. I think it was Jim Rohn that first said that. Bigger is not better. And if you look at it, the top 1% of podcasts now get 47,000 downloads per episode. So even quote unquote, the big ones aren't huge. The ones that are really doing well are the ones that have rabid fans and that are engaged. So I think the more niche down, the more focused you can make it, the better. Yeah, because it's if it's a generic podcast, you're competing with, I don't know, maybe another 10,000 generic podcasts like that. But if you niche down and your audience, there could be no competition. Right. There's that whole thing of content is king, but context is God. So if you can give them context, it'll convert so much better.
I got somebody reached out a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of these, and I won't mention the name of it. It was one of these online radio companies. What do you think about that? What do you think about doing it all? Doing the podcast, doing it all, but using that as a platform as well. What do you think?
I think there's going to have to be a clear winner on a platform for podcasting to really take off, right? You look at it, if you say video, everybody thinks of YouTube. And probably 7 years ago, there was lots of different video players out there. I think part of it right now is there's so much fragmentation in podcasts. in video shows like this, that is really hard from a discoverability standpoint. So I think we are going to see some consolidation in the industry. Where I think a networks makes sense is if there's cross-pollination, right? And I think of like, I grew up in Chicago, so you've got the Art Institute there. They've curated all this great art so that if somebody comes in to see one thing, they're going to see all the rest of that. And so I think if the network can curate shows that are similar and bring value, there could be great benefit to that. One of them that's an example is there's a network out there called the Pod Network, Parents on Demand. And so they've got shows everywhere from, for expecting parents to toddlers to potty training, all the way up to, getting your kids ready for college. That's a genius idea. Because you can move from one to another, and you might have multiple children in different ones. But the idea that thinks you're going to do, the potty training podcast, and people are going to stay with you for decades. Well, at times as you're going through potty training, it may seem like you're going to be there for decades. But yeah, I think if you could do a curation of shows like that, it might make sense.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but that's a great way to sort of continually regenerate your audience and get new engagement and new people in and new conversations. So I've got Tom Feltenstein. Thanks for joining us today, Tom. I think Tom wants you to call him. He's left his phone number for you.
I hope that's not the same Tom I owe money to.
I don't know. Maybe it's the Tom I owe money to. Who knows? But anyway, and then Karen chimed in. Thanks, Karen, for joining the conversation today. How do you monetize a podcast? How are people from your experience doing that, or is that something that you shouldn't think about or worry about?
I think you should think about it, right? Your time is valuable. People ask me, do you speak for free? No, never. No. And they're like, do you get paid to be on a podcast? I'm like, if I do it right, I do. Right. Now it may not be that you're going to get a check and a 1099 from the host that says, thank you for your appearance, but you should be doing things that add value to the listeners.
I need your address for the 1099, by the way, but just teasing.
You can tell I just going through tax season here, but I'd love. There's a book out there called "Thou Shalt Prosper" by Rabbi Daniel Lapin. I'm not Jewish, but he's my rabbi. And I love how he talks about certificates of appreciation. He says, you're serving someone when they give you certificates of appreciation. And he said in the United States, those are pieces of green paper with dead presidents on it. So should you be monetizing? Yes, you should be helping people. So the idea that I can talk and in 30 minutes tell you everything you need to know about podcast interview marketing, it's not going to happen. So make sure that you have other resources there for them, other ways to connect with them. And to me, exposure brings opportunity. Some of my best partnerships, some of my best customers have come from being exposed to places where I was quote unquote talking for free. I can think of podcasters that had to shut down their podcast because they got a dream job. Well, right. They were talking for free, and then somebody heard them and said, "I want to hire this person." So was that their plan on monetizing it? Probably not from the beginning, but it worked out better than if they were selling Audible. So I think to me, exposure brings opportunity, and always to focus on that.
What is that? What do you think that looks like? as someone starting this, well, I've been doing this for about 8 or 9 months, but what does it look like? What does monetization look like? Is it ads? Is it
I,
what is it? What is it?
I think selling ads is a really hard way to do it, right?
Okay.
I might have this number wrong. I think Audible Pay is now $10 or $12 per 1,000 downloads.
Okay.
So you figure, okay, if you're in the top 1% of all podcasts, right, you've got 50,000 downloads. What is that? $600
Yep.
In Audible. That's a lot of work to get $600 an episode. To me, I think the best way to do that is have a product yourself. Why would I want to sell my advertising to somebody else? Why can't I use that myself? The other thing too is, one of the things that I learned in the Navy was knows the right answer when told. And you have to be smart enough to know right answer when told. And a lot of times your customers are telling you what they want. It could be, hey, let's do a live event, or let's do a meetup. I'm amazed at when I see podcasters show up in a different city and do a live event. The guys from, we talked about Joe Saul Seahigh from Stacking Benjamins, another great Citadel cadet there. And last year, I think he did 5 sold out shows at comedy clubs. As he was going around different places, they started to do live shows there. And, they made some money on it. They had a lot of friends. They also made some raving fans that drove for, I think some of them drove like a couple 100 miles to come to a show in Kansas City. And, there's different ways to monetize there. And I think the more you do it, the more opportunities come out there, and just being open to it. Some people are, they'll take it and make a book out of it. Other ones will do courses, live events. I think really what your audience wants, and package it for them.
Yeah. I've had just the conversations, the ROI for me, just having these kind of conversations with people and growing your network in a real way, because often, I'll have these interviews and the conversations don't stop there, right? It's an intro. This is the first time you and I have gotten to sit down and talk, but now that we've done that, I think that there's more that can come from that, and so for me, it's the relationships that are being built because of the platform has been really great, and it has. I've done some live events, and you're absolutely right. They're a lot of fun, number one, and it is a way to sort of grow that audience, and again, be with people who appreciate what you're doing. So we've got Wendy Cooper. She says exposure brings opportunity. Absolutely, Wendy, you're absolutely right. So what do you want to? What's the takeaway for you today? What would you leave the audience with?
I go back and think of something I learned when I was in the Navy. And it was, what's ordinary to you is amazing to other people. And I was stationed on an aircraft carrier, and you could always tell someone that was brand new. They would climb all of the ladders, the stairs, to get up to Vulture's Row to watch the planes take off and land. And after about 2 or 3 days, you just realize that's ordinary, and that's a long walk. And you wouldn't do that anymore. And you'd get off the ship, and everybody would ask you, do you watch the planes take off and land? And it's like, no, it's ordinary to me, but it's amazing to you. And I think we all have that in our business. Whatever whatever you do, even in your life, what's ordinary to you is amazing to other people. We often underestimate what we know and overestimate or overvalue what other people know. And, to me, I have been taught and helped by so many people in my life that I want to give back what I have learned. And I always encourage other people to do that. Today it's easier than ever to do it as a podcast guest, as a podcast host. What you know, is ordinary to you, but it's amazing to others. So figure out a way to share that. It'll improve your life. It'll improve other people's lives, and you meet a whole lot of nice people in the way.
That's fantastic. That's a fantastic way to wrap up. And so one more time, so that they can go to this landing site. I want to mention that again, because I want people to be able to find Interview Valet and understand a little bit about what you guys are offering and what you have.
Sure. So if you go to interviewvalet.com/power lunch, everything we talk about, we'll put up there. I'll put those offers up there. The three things, the checklist. In the military, we said checklists are written in blood. Make sure it's somebody else's blood. This is what we give all of our clients. So every interview you do can be great. Put a copy of my free book there, Podcast Guest Profits, How to Grow Your Business with a Targeted Interview Strategy. And then finally, all my contact information. So if this made any sense to you and you'd like to talk about how we could help you get on targeted podcast interviews to help grow your business, you can find my calendar link there. Everything at interviewvalet.com/power lunch.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom. And thank you for spending some time with us today during your lunch on the East Coast, and on the West Coast, you may be eating breakfast. I don't know. But anyway, thank you for spending some time with us today. Give the program a like or share if you like the program, so that we can grow and your audience can, or your friends can benefit from these conversations. And one thing to mention before we go is we do go to conferences. We do broadcast live. We do the Power Lunch live from conferences and events. And so if you want to bring the program and do LinkedIn Live from your event or conference, please get in touch. You can find all of that and our upcoming schedule on powerlunch.live, powerlunch.live. And until tomorrow, go out and do good in the world, and have a great day.